Morning, church. Great to see you. I want us to think this morning and maybe a few times over the next week or so about Black History Month. You may be aware of it. You may have found it a little bit challenging. Like why Black History Month? Why not? Isn't that just history? Don't we? Why do we need a Black History Month? Why do we not need a White History Month, a Brown History Month, or whatever History Month? But this is one of those important things that we as Christians in particular need to get hold of. And often, they say, don't they, that history is written by the winners. And often what we find in historical context is that people are ignored or erased or at least not given any profile. So it's not that we're in some way inventing a black history, but what we're doing is we're saying they're part of the history of our nation has got a element that is black and ethnic minority that often is ignored. You can do a little bit of research into the world wars and see how many, it was 1 million Indians, for instance, fought in the First World War, and occasionally you'll see a picture of those Sikhs marching. You know what I mean? So it's actually trying to redress an issue here of balance. And as Christians, we should be particularly sensitive to this, because often the Christian history of our nation, of the nations, is ignored. And when we kind of get hold of that, we go, oh yeah, like they'll talk about Wilberforce being a great pioneer in the abolition of slavery, but they rarely talk about his faith. They talk about Titus Salt and his incredible houses and conditions for his workers in Saltaire, but they rarely talk about his faith unless it's on songs of praise. So you see, we suffer, don't we, from our history being sidelined, and that's certainly the case if you are British and black, or British and ethnic minority. So this is relevant to us, but this is a devotional for the church. So I want us to think about some black lives that really matter to the church across the centuries. And you might have such a person that is a hero of yours, a male or female hero of yours. So if that's the case, message me. I'll tell you if that person's been done yet, and if not, do me a devotional. But let's start. I'd like us to start in Acts 13. So in Acts 13 we get maybe the first multi-ethnic team mentioned certainly in scripture, but maybe in world literature. I've not read it all, so I don't know exactly. But in Acts 13 you get this little list, first couple of verses of Acts 13. It talks about Barnabas, who is a Jew from Cyprus. It talks about Simon, called Niger, who is a black African. Lucius of Cyrene, so he's North African, so he's a brown African. And Manaen, who is a wealthy, upper-class Jewish boy, stepbrother to Herod. And that's funny, isn't it? Herod, who has John the Baptist's head taken off, his close friend, stepbrother, childhood friend, becomes leader in the church. And Paul, who was a Roman citizen. None of those guys actually are particularly white, it must be said. So we see from the early church that the makeup of the church was multi-ethnic. That's so important for us to get hold of. This is not a white religion, or neither is it a black religion or a brown religion. We are followers of Jesus, who says to all, come to me, you who are weary and heavy laden. I want us to jump about 250 years to 296 and into the 300s and think about a particular favourite of mine. His name is Athanasius. You may have heard the phrase Athanasius contra mundum, Athanasius against the world, because Athanasius was a man who stood against a particular difficult heresy that had swamped the whole of the church in Rome, in Asia Minor, across what is now Turkey, across Europe. And it was this thing called the Arian heresy. And you've encountered the Arian heresy when the Jehovah's Witnesses have knocked on your door, because they still follow an Arian heresy. They believe that Jesus is good, but he's not God, that he is created, that he has not always been. And Athanasius, he saw the issue with this. You see, he sees this idea that unless Jesus is God, how can his death have a lasting impact? But unless Jesus is human, how can he die for us anyway? This is not a splitting of theological hairs. This is very important. This is salvation itself. Athanasius himself says, to those who maintain there was a time when the Son was not, rob God of his word like plunderers. He is an absolutely brilliant guy, and he fought against this insidious heresy. But the important thing for us perhaps this morning is that he wasn't white. The kind people, the Eastern Orthodox Church, they call him the father of orthodoxy. Brilliant. The people who hated him called him the Black Dwarf. The Black Dwarf. He's an Egyptian. He was an Egyptian, and he was short, and he had black skin. Look at that. People have been throwing racial slurs at people for a long time, haven't they? When Athanasius, he fought this whole idea of the divinity of Christ, trying to show the church in which that he ran, the church which he led, that Jesus was fully human and fully God. And for his efforts, he kept getting exiled. He was exiled 5 times, I think it was, by 4 different emperors. He's from North Africa. At one point, he was exiled all the way over to kind of the Luxembourg, Germany border. Imagine that in the winter, grim. But he kept fighting, and he kept writing, and he kept showing from Scripture that Jesus was always in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. One of his fantastic quotes is that God became man so that man might become God. Absolutely brilliant. He talks a lot also about, if Jesus isn't God, then how could he be raised from the dead? How could he be alive now? Jehovah's Witnesses have a particular issue, don't they, with there being a man in heaven, Jesus Christ. But Athanasius is saying, well, how can he have conquered death? But we as Christians know that death is conquered. He was absolutely fantastic. He also inspired St. Nicholas, who also wasn't white. Somebody might want to do something on him. That would be cool. My last little tidbit from Athanasius is that in one of his festal letters, one of the letters he wrote kind of at Christmas time to the whole parish to say, this is what's going on this year, this is when Easter will be, this is when Christmas will be, that kind of stuff. And he said these are the 27 books of the New Testament. These are the writings that you should be reading. Don't be reading that stuff from Arius. Don't be reading that other stuff from Manichaeism stuff. Read these 27, and that's the 27 we've got. He was a very influential man. He continues to be so. The Black Dwarf, the hero of orthodoxy, absolutely brilliant guy. Black History Month. There's Athanasius. You might want to do a bit more reading on him, but you need to see that our history is not colour coded. Our history is found in the people of God. So let's have your Black History lives. Great. Thanks, church.